one of my rules in the book is never fax the facts and never ship the shit. So if the guy wants facts, you hand deliver them, drop it off. Why would you want to email the data sheet? He might be busy that day and just delete your email. You only get forever to make another impression. If you're just starting out in your career, or even if you're in the middle of your career, you're at work or whatever, remember that every time your boss walks by you, you're making an impression. When I started that company, I'd only been married 6 days. We had a little townhouse, and I basically turned one of the top bedrooms of this townhouse into the corporate worldwide headquarters of the company. I think the first year we did like 400K or something. It ended up growing to, I can't remember the exact, but it was in the mid 8 figures, $40-50 million type revenue type company when we sold it. You really want to dial in on, an area to be focused on so you can become competent and respected and known in the industry, right? Like a lot of people, especially in Canada, know who I am in my world, right? When you take a job with a company, try to learn this up front. But if it's just your first job in sales or whatever, and you're happy to get it, figure out where you are in the food chain of, am I number 1 brand? Am I number 2? Am I number 3 and number 4? And if you realize you're below number 2, like 3, 4, 5, quit.
All right, welcome back to another episode of the Dropped Playbook. Today, I have a very special man here with me that I came across on LinkedIn for the first time. He was actually promoting a book he wrote recently that he started, that he published and started selling. And then I realized that this guy has sold his company recently and just kind of got very intrigued about and wanted to learn more about. So everybody, this is Glenn. Glenn, why don't you just quickly introduce yourself and then we can kick it off.
Thanks, Stefan. Glad to be here. My name is Glenn Poulos. I'm from Toronto, Canada. And I work for a company called NWS Canada, formerly Gap Wireless, which was the company I started in 2007 and sold last year. And they rolled it into their bigger entity, and the name got changed a couple months ago. And so I've gone from entrepreneur to employee in the last little while, which is quite a change, let me tell you. But also, lots of stories I'd love to go over from the past. Whatever you want to cover, Stefan, would be great.
Yeah, well, that's the difficult part, honestly, because like as I was going through the talking points, I was like, where do I even begin? Because here's the thing: this isn't your first rodeo. So you had another company. You went through a more than one global, let's say, crisis back in 2007, 2008.
Yeah.
And you also recently, like I said, you launched your book. You also started your podcast. You're very active on LinkedIn. So there's so many things that we can start with. But let's just start with the recent sale of your company and what it actually feels like to go from an owner and to an employee. So like maybe you can give us an intro of what the company is.
Sure.
Who you sell to, and how the sale went down.
Yeah, so started the company in 2007, and although it wasn't a linear growth, lots of stories along the way, but we kind of grew sort of consistently up from 2007 to 2022, and we were about $1 million in 2007 from February to December of 2007, and we in 2022 we did 84 million. So that's kind of the revenue growth path of the company, right? And we sold it in 2022 February, and we sold it to a U.S. private equity firm. So they have these funds where they buy companies and then they sort of integrate them into a larger entity, and then ultimately they will sell that to a bigger private equity, right? And so we're part of we were the second one in. They bought at least one other one, which we've now absorbed into our company in Canada. It was a second Canadian company. And it was, if you have questions about the sale, I'm happy to answer them. There's so many moving pieces to it. I'm not sure where to start. So
Let's start with what the company actually does. So
Oh, okay.
what is the product? I usually tend to speak with like more tech companies. This is
This
a
is a
good
tech
example.
company. We are
All right.
all about tech. So we're prior, prior to this year or so, we were primarily focused in mobile broadband wireless. So really the cellular phone companies in Canada and the US. But we now are a little bit more taking on a bit of a more broadband approach, fiber to the home, fiber to the premises, things like that, just because of the convergence of wire and wireless communications. We've always had a saying in our wireless company, it was Gap Wireless, right? Before was that there's a lot of wires in wireless, right? And we sell wires. That's what we sell. And we also sell radio products, antenna products, all the products up on a cell phone tower. We sell all that stuff. When you go to a stadium, you look up, you see all those antennas. That's the stuff we sell. We make wireless work inside buildings and hospitals and campuses and things like that. And and we also sell basic cable, fiber, things like that for telecom companies to deploy their networks. And that's what the company does. We're a distributor, so we don't really make the products. We represent companies from around the world, and from Asia, from Europe, from Australia, from Singapore, Malaysia, and US, and we sell them in our domestic territories.
Okay, there a lot there to unpack. So, okay, we're talking about a global distributing company. What led to actually starting something like that, and what's the difference today compared to when you started back in 2007?
So yeah, so the where how it evolved was, there's lots of companies that have advanced technology. Like there might be a company in Germany, say, right, where they develop a special radio technology that they want to sell around the world, but they don't have enough money to have salespeople in every country. So they hire technical sales specialists, distributors in each territory, and they say, look, we'll give you Canada, then US, what have you. They'll give you a region, right? And we are typically Canada or North America. And, we would get exclusive or semi-exclusive relationships, and we would learn their products and go and sell them at our customers. Mm-hmm. And they're like, they want to hire us because they want to sell to Bell or TELUS, T-Mobile, Verizon, etc. And so I learned that back in 1985 when I got my first sales job. I was working for someone else, and I realized they had all these vendors that they sold for from around the world. And these owners were making all this money. I was a salesman. I was doing okay. But I realized, hey, if I owned the company, I would be able to make money every time every salesman gets paid instead of just when I sell something, right? So 5 years after I started working for them, I left them and I started a company focused on mobile broadband wireless. Again, back then it was just a basic cell phone, analog cell phone in 1991. And I ran that company for 15 years. And that company was sold, and then there was a problem with the public company, and I had to sort of start over in 2007. And that's when I started Gap Wireless and built that for 15 years. So that's how I got to my 35 years of sales, and always doing the same thing, selling technology, primarily communication technology, to Canadian and US customers for suppliers from around the world. And yeah.
What did that look like in the early days? How did you said you went from $1 million to like 80,
80 yeah.
84?
So the interesting thing was also in the first company in 1991, right. It was when I started that company, I'd only been married 6 days. We had a little townhouse, and I basically turned one of the top bedrooms of this townhouse into the corporate worldwide headquarters of the company. And, we started selling, I think the first year we did like 400K or something back in 1991. It ended up growing to, I can't remember the exact, but it was in the mid 8 figures, $40-50 million type revenue type company when we sold it. And, we grew from my bedroom, to a small industrial unit of 1,000 square feet, then to a bigger one, 3,000, then 5,000, then 50,000, right? And so when we started this company, I'd already done the bedroom thing, and I realized, hey, because it was only myself, my business partner, a salesman in Calgary, and a lady to help with the orders and stuff. And I realized, hey, we need an office, we need a proper building. So we rented a small space in Toronto area from the get-go. And, and we were there for a few years. It was like 3,000 square feet. And it was like 4 people for the first year or so. Then the people started slowly joining, and, we were, probably 40 people when we sold. And we were, we have 2 warehouses and offices now. We now have about 50,000 square feet of warehouse across Canada. We've taken on another company in Quebec, so we're now up to 70 people. But when it was just my company, we had 40 people. So,
okay. So when you were starting Gap Wireless, you had the playbook. You basically already went through the hoops. You already kind of walked over the fire for the first time, so you knew what to expect, right? So I can assume it was a lot easier to hit that first million. At Gap, right? Okay.
Yeah. So also I approached my business partner, who was very, very technical and a very good salesperson. And I said, look, I made a plan. There's 186 things we need to do to get the company going. And I'd like to be the general manager and take care of most of this stuff. Obviously, we'll decide on it together, but I'd like to be the general manager. And he saw the list of 186 things. And he says, sure, you go ahead and do that. Right. And, and so, I basically started checking off the list, create the name, get a trademark for the name, set up a website, get it, do the banking, get the insurance, get real estate, get the racks, get tow motors, get all that stuff. Right. And I just started chipping away at the list. Check, right. At the time, I was also doing some of the selling, and we went to our customers from our old company, because that old company was shut down by the company that bought us. And so we kind of all got pushed out into we were kind of had a job with them after we sold the business, but then we were all unemployed. And so we went back to our old customers and we said, look, we're bringing some of this technology back to you under this new name, and we'd like to get your business. And, some of them were kind of mad about what had happened in the old business. We said we were sorry. And, they slowly started to add, trust us. And after, a little while, they trusted us. They realized everything was fine. And, Glenn knew what he was doing, and, and the business kind of grew quickly, not super quickly, but it, grew continuously from that point, right?
Right. So you mentioned, so in the first year you made, you hit that $1 million in revenue, or did it take a bit longer?
Yeah, the first year we did about $1 million. The second year was like 2, and then 4, and then 10. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Nice. Yeah. Well, and so when did you, and because this is a very important question for a lot of founders and entrepreneurs, when do you stop selling as the founder? And like, when do you build a sales team, and what does that transition actually look like?
Yeah. So the one thing about selling you have to realize is that there's the only 2 types of salespeople: one that cost you money and the one that make you money, right? And so the ones that sell are free. The ones that don't sell cost you money, right? So you have to start bringing in people, when the business obviously needs to have some cash flow to afford it, but you want to be delegating and elevating. So you need to look at what you're good at, right? And you may never give up selling, but you might give up accounting right away because it's not you're not a strong accounting person. So the first person you hire is maybe the accounting manager. And then that, okay, now the accounting manager can handle the office administration and some of the, and now you can work on sales, marketing, business development, vendor relations and things like that. And the accounting team can then start growing an admin, and then maybe you realize between sales and marketing, you're really better at sales than you are at marketing. So maybe you hire a marketing manager, marketing communications, and you're still focusing on the customers. Maybe you're the sales manager. You've hired 2 salesmen and they're better. But basically when you realize that there's better people to do the job than yourself, that's when you should remove yourself. And the perfect world is when they all report to you and you don't have to do anything. Yep. You've got a director of sales, director of operations, director of finance, director of marketing, director of finance, and they're all very skilled people. And you just basically have to answer their questions, provide leadership and vision, and make sure the business is properly funded and you're looking to the future on how the business will grow, and let each manager run sales, marketing, finance, operations, etc. Right?
Got it. Got it.
Yeah. And so don't be too quick to wanting to hire people until you can afford them. But always remember that a salesman that sells is free because they're selling for themselves, they're paid for themselves, and they're paying for your people. A salesman that doesn't sell, you need to get rid of them quickly and get someone good, someone better, right?
That's a very strong message. All right. So you mentioned funding and making sure the business is funded. So in your case, was the business bootstrapped, or did you have any external funding, or was it like a combination? What was it?
Yeah. So we used a strategy. So I'd already had my own business. I'd sold it to a public company, and I became a multimillionaire, but it was in shares in the business, right? But that public company went bankrupt, so the shares went to zero. And so I went from multimillionaire to broke almost overnight, right? And I realized, hey, wait a minute, I got to be careful how I handle when I set up the second company, I decided that I didn't want to have all of my personal assets pledged or my personal net worth. So we borrowed the money. We were able to get and we gave up some equity for that debt, which we ultimately bought. We had to pay it back. We had to pay back the loan, and we had to buy them out later. But I chose to, in my situation, to use someone else's money and give up some equity. But there's no free ride, right? If you want to own 100%, then you have to fund it out of your line of credit of your house. You got to put your house on the line. And if it fails, you lose everything, right? And I chose not to be personally liable. Later, we ended up having to pledge our houses and things because the business grew so fast. We needed more funding, and we needed large lines of credit. But we started it with a small amount of debt. We paid off that debt in a few months, and then we worked on reducing their equity over time, right? And because that money we had to come out of our pocket to pay for that, right? So that's how we did it.
So what are the margins in this business?
Our business is like typically on a day-to-day basis, it's mainly like 15 to 22% gross margin.
Got it. Well, okay.
Well, some stuff is higher margin. Huge deals might be a little bit lower margin, but day-to-day, 15 to 22%.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. And well, yeah. Okay. So it took 15 years to get to like where you are right now. And I remember you mentioning there have been some stronger years compared to some years where you had to kind of, regulate the amount of people who are on the team and stuff like that. And so when did you decide it was time to sell the company? And was it like, your dream from the beginning, or like, how did that play out?
So the reason for the up and down is we were all about wireless until recently, right? Where Now we're more wireline as well, and wireless is driven by the G's, 2G, 3G, 4G, 5G, right? Right now we're in the middle of 5G, but we're in a bit of a lull, right? There was a big 5G build. Now there's some 2023 is very low, but it'll pick back up again. But so we would spike up and down like a kind of like a seesaw or whatever, like a triangle wave moving upwards, always moving upwards, but there's always a down after each G. They would build the 2G network, then they would want to capitalize on, get their money out of it. And then they would build the 3G network, right? And then there'd be a lull, then the 4G network, then the 5G, right? And so, we realized, and we had to really right size the business in 2019 because we started getting into other areas we didn't understand. We started selling drones and unmanned aircraft and stuff like that. We thought, hey, and we, because we basically started thinking, oh, well, we're so successful selling this, we should sell that, right? And that was a big mistake, and we had to let go some people and compress our business. But at that point, when we did that, our profits skyrocketed when we focused on our core business. And in 2021, and 2022, we realized we're going to have sort of record profits that continue to grow. And when a private equity wants to buy you, they want to look at an average of 3 years, right? And we realized that, hey, if we wait too long, we'll be in a lull of 5G and we'll have a bad year averaging into 2 good years. So so in 2022, we realized it was a perfect time. We had 3 great years to make an average for the multiple that they would. And we realized we could take a chance on 2023, but we thought, knowing what we knew from 4G and 3G, that there would be a huge downturn, which there was. And we would have made less money on the sale. So that's how we decided to sell when we had 3 really, really good years stacked together that would yield enough that we would be happy if we sold the business.
All right. So a few questions. First,
Go ahead.
real quick. So did the PE company, were they aware that there was going to be like a lower period, or did they miss that part? Like, did they count that low period coming into the equation?
I don't think they were as well aware of it as we were. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Because I'm just curious how familiar are they actually with the industry, with the company they're buying? So in general, like
they're very, very familiar with telecom, but more on the service provider side, like phone companies and providing service to customers, than they are on the hardware side. We're the first silo that's in hardware, and so they were more used to recurring revenue from phone companies, broadband, internet providers, and stuff like that. And so the up and downs of our business probably a little bit more surprising to them than phone companies, where they know how many customers they have, and it doesn't really go up and down that much, right?
Gotcha. Well, yeah, okay, that makes sense. So did they approach you guys, or
Yes.
did you really?
Yeah. You find that after a few years, when you have a certain amount of size, that business brokers are constantly bugging you. And we, starting, I don't know what year starting, but year over year, like, people would come, and every once in a while we would say, oh, well, I wonder what it would be like if we sold it. And they would come in, they kick the tires, we give them a bit of information. And before they give you an IOI, an indicator of interest, or a letter of intent, it's binding, so where you're in a deep negotiation, they kind of give you kind of a like a softball quote of what they think the range is, right? And over those years, we're like, no, forget it, we're not giving it. No, we're in the wrong. We're not. It's too soon, right? We're not going to work this long and then give it away for that amount. And so you have to. But every once in a while, these people are coming around, and then it's like, no, someone came last year. We know it's not the right time. Come back in a couple of years, right? And so every once in a while you would go through the motions, but it wasn't until the 2020s that we started hearing numbers that were interesting enough. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. And how long, so from the moment that the last these guys approached you to the moment that you sold the company, how long did it take you to close the whole thing?
Yeah. So they approached us in the early summer of 2021.
Right.
So May, June, and by February it was done.
Well, that's fairly quick, don't you think?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I mean, from what I've seen, it can take anywhere from 12 to I don't know.
It could for bigger, more complex deals, but I don't think we were a complex deal for them. We had a very well-run company. We had a very solid accounting system, inventory management. We have everything has a system in our business. They were able to come in and examine everything.
Nice.
We didn't have a lot of like complex, legally risky things, like complex contracts with customers. Was basically, how much should we sell? How much should we buy? What did we ship? What's in stock? But some people have really weird contracts with customers, and they have to figure out what's the real value. We didn't have a lot of that stuff. And so I think for them, it was probably easy, one of their more easy deals, right?
Got it. And so you mentioned 84 million right now, or when you sold it?
Yeah. So in 2022, we did 84 million in revenue.
84. Yeah. So you were at 100-ish. Can you disclose?
Yeah. So I mean, this year is down actually a bit, but I mean, our plan was to do over 100 million. I don't know if I'll hit it, but that was the plan. Now is and I mean, we definitely want to be growing from where we were. So even if we have it down, we're expected to come back, right? So
got it. And so can you disclose the amount that you sold for?
Yeah, that's because of my partners. I can't really, but it was well into the mid eight figures. So
Congrats.
well over 10 million, and well into the 10 millions of sale price. Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, that's an amazing and inspiring story. What's your biggest takeaway from that process?
It's always to know if you're staying behind, to know exactly what your role will be, and to and how you'll fit in, and will you match with your psychological profile of what makes you happy, or if you're exiting the business, make sure if there's any earnouts or anything, like who's going to be responsible for the money if you have to get an earnout later if you're not there to protect it, right? So you want to understand, are you staying or leaving? And if you're staying, you want a really solid employment contract. You want to know, what's my job, what's my title, who's the boss, who isn't, what do I do, what do I don't do, who's in charge, what do I get paid, you want a very solid, spend a lot of time on that, because you're now an employee, and so you're not in charge anymore, so you only have what's written on paper, so make sure it's good.
Has that been a struggle, or at least
no, because I actually had done it before, and so I'd already had these melding of companies, so I had good experience. So I have a very detailed list of job description. I spent a lot of time on it, and they barely even looked at it and said that's fine. They signed off on it, and that's my job, and I still have that job today. And, I have the exact same job I had before I sold the business.
Gotcha. What about your partner? Is he still?
Yeah, so he's still in the business, and his roles evolved a bit, but he's still in his primary role that he was in before. So,
gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, that's
just part of a bigger team, basically. So.
Cool. I do want to go back to your first business, but before we do, I want to ask you about your book.
Sure.
So I mean, because I want to use the opportunity to also help you promote it to the audience that's listening to this. But like, has the business that you've been running for the past 15 years basically been an inspiration for the book, and if so, in what capacity?
Yeah, so basically the book is sort of all the rules that I learned from the day I started in sales till the day I wrote the book, right? And it's 57 tips, 57 factors on building a career and building a business in sales, right? And so I share stories throughout my career of things I learned, things to do, things not to do, little rules I follow. And my mantra is how to get, act, and stay in front of customers, and to be a pleasure to do business with always.
Wow.
That's how I sum it up in sort of a couple of sentences about what sort of the business is all about, right?
What would you say? Why do your customers want to continue doing business with you?
Because we're a pleasure to do business with. Regardless of the outcome of a sale, we're always there to support them. Even if we lose, we're there the next time, and that is our standout sort of quality that stands out amongst all of our competitors. All of our customers say it. Out of everyone, you guys are the most pleasurable to do business with. We love dealing with your company. Don't ever change, right? And so we hold that as one of our core values. Yeah,
I love that. Do you feel like it? I mean, it must have had impact on how long your customers stay with you.
It has. I mean, and most of our customers have been here since day one, right? And we deal with large carriers. They're all deal with us still. We're deep in their food chain, and they rely on us for technical advice, product suggestions, difficult problems they're trying to solve. They come to us with all those things.
So I don't know your industry, but maybe you can help the audience, somebody from the audience who is in this industry. What is something that you would give them as advice being a part of this industry? Obviously, other than being a pleasure to work with.
So I mean, we're in like mobile wireless telecom for the most part, right? So in the cell phone industry, and we're on the network side. Like, we don't sell cell phones and we don't sell service. We sell the hardware that goes in to build the network, right? And so the one advice I always give anyone in sales or whatever is, when you take a job with a company, I mean, try to learn this up front. But if it's just your first job in sales or whatever, and you're happy to get it, figure out where you are in the food chain of, am I number one brand? Am I number two? Am I number three and number four? And if you realize you're below number two, like 3, 4, 5, quit,
skip,
move on, get a better job.
Nice.
And from that point forward, don't ever go with anyone less than brand one or brand two, because you only have so many minutes in a day. And, once today is gone, it's gone forever. And if you're selling a crappy brand that doesn't get the business, even though you're a perfect salesman, you wasted a day. You're never getting that day back. So always work with the top brands so that warrants your time, right? Like, you want to hold yourself, you want the best possible product to sell so that you're representing, the best brand out there, and that your time is most valued, right?
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I want to make sure we also cover this topic as well. It sounds like this whole industry really relies more on sales rather than marketing. But I'm just curious, what is the role of marketing in a company like yours?
Yeah. So, I mean, we use marketing primarily for lead generation, right? And so, we're bringing new brands to the markets often. So these are brands that are not the household name, perhaps, right? Like, there are brands in telecom like Corning and CommScope and things like that are household names to every technical person in the planet, right? Where, so we use marketing to, get the attention of customers on new and upcoming technology. So that's all marketing, right? Lead generation and stuff like that. So for us, it's very important that we have a very good presence. So we have a very strong LinkedIn presence. We publish newsletters. We do mailing campaigns. We have a large trade show program that we do. These are all marketing efforts in order to generate leads, right? But none of our products are sold sort of like marketing does lead generation, and then they dial the website, and then they download a trial, and then and then after sales, sales success. We're not selling software as a service or anything like that. We need to typically go to our customer, show them the items, trial the items. Maybe if it's an antenna, they put it up on a tower, test it, and so for us, sales and marketing are separate. So basically, when you're in front of a customer, selling the product, showing them how it works, that's selling. Everything else is marketing, lead generation, stuff like that, right? And they're both important. And I wouldn't say we're more sales than marketing, because we have a very strong marketing initiative, but we have a very distinct, wall between the two.
Gotcha. No. That's exactly what I was asking, because, and when I say, more of a sales, what I mean is it's a sales-led type of business more than it is marketing-led.
Absolutely. Okay. Yes, very much so. Yeah.
And it makes it.
Like sense. If we were selling some sort of like wireless analysis software tool or whatever, it would all be marketing based, and it would be led by SDRs and BDRs, and we'd be pushing content out on a marketing basis, and sales guys would come in at the appropriate moment when, and I understand what you mean, and we are definitely sales-led.
Yeah. Okay. That sounds cool. So let's just recap. So lead gen would basically mean events, content, newsletters, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
As well as I guess
Google AdWords, stuff like that. We do paid advertising, but we do we do a lot with Google and stuff like that. We're ranked very high. We do a lot of money on SEO on our website. We have a web store, all that. So
okay, I love that. And when does sales get involved actually?
So, well, once it's a lead, we do track everything in HubSpot and stuff like that. But the moment it's a lead, one of the silo managers, depending upon the technology, assigns it to the correct sales rep, either inside or outside, depending upon who they are, what the value is, etc. And then it becomes a sales thing, and then the salespeople report back so that we can close the loop in HubSpot on whether the marketing effort was paid off.
Gotcha.
And so the moment it's a real lead, it goes to sales, and they close the loop with marketing later and said what happened, so they can measure the effectiveness of the campaign. But marketing's out of the loop at that point.
Gotcha. And so the salesperson would just call them up, right?
Yeah, pretty much. They would phone them up and say, "Hey, I heard you're this. I'm going to be in your area tomorrow. Can I drop off some literature in the lobby?" And that's when they start using my book. Never sit in the lobby. Something in your hands, something in your mind. And basically try to establish rapport with the customer because, it seems like, I could do it all remotely and I could send them the data sheets. And so one of my rules in the book is never fax the facts and never ship the shit. Right. So if the guy wants facts, you hand deliver them, drop it off. Why would you want to email the data sheet? He might be busy that day and just delete your email. Right. The guy says, I want a brochure on that new, blah, 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 whatever it is. Hey, well, that's funny. I'm going to be in, your neck of the woods tomorrow. Can I drop it off? Well, I'm too busy. How about I put it in the lobby for you? Okay, just drop it in the lobby. And then tomorrow I go to the lobby and call him from the lobby and say, I'm here. I got your data sheet. And he forgot that he told you to drop it off. And he's like, okay, I'll be down in a minute. And he comes down. Now you got something in your hand, something in your mind. You give him the data sheet. Then, go to the next rule. Always ask him for a mini tour. So, hey, can I see where you're going to use this stuff? Okay, well, I'm busy. Well, it'll only take a minute. I just want to, and then the guy, and then I have a whole series of rules that I follow after that. And they're all in the book, right? But, and that's how I like to act, and stay in front of customers and to be a pleasure to do business with always, right?
Nice.
Yeah.
It sounds like a very...
it's very systematic.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. It's like a mantra almost.
I do the same thing over and over again.
And it's funny. I mean, not funny, but obviously I'm a lot younger than you in the sense of business and what I've achieved in my career and my life. And I learn a lot from people like you, right? And it seems like the longer you do the same thing, the longer you remain within the same industry and a similar business, the more successful and the more wealthy you are.
Like not jumping around is really good advice in the sense that unless you're making a pattern like profitable leaps up, right? I'm moving up in my level, my pay, and my technology, right? But not too much where it looks like, oh my God, every 2 years, this guy can't last more than 18 months anywhere. That doesn't look good, right? Mm-hmm. But, salesman at ABC Technologies, senior salesman for 4 years at this one, then 8 years as sales manager at this company, then director of sales for, 10 years. And I mean, because you got a whole career, right? And then, then that's the sort of pattern people want to see. But not moving around too much. And, you really want to dial in on an area to be focused on so you can become competent and respected and known in the industry, right? Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people, especially in Canada, know who I am in my world, right?
I was just
they don't know me, but they know me, right? They know my name. That's Glenn, Gap Wireless, sold it to the, blah, blah, blah. They know who I am, right?
And you've been doing that ever since like
1985.
85, mid 80s, like it's been a minute. And like that's when you started as a sales rep, sales technician, right?
In 1985.
Wow. And how long did you stay in that role?
Till 1991, and then I quit and started my first company.
And you were 29 back then, right?
29 and a half. That was halfway to 30.
And six days married.
That's right. 6 days married. October 1991.
What did your wife tell you?
Well, she was pretty freaked out.
I can imagine.
Yeah. She's like, what? Because she was very conservative and whatever. And like, and I'm like, don't worry. It's fine. And I started making money from the get-go. We were selling like the right away. Like because we knew where to go. And we, the first couple of vendors we were selling for, there were customers that wanted to buy it. And we just need to go out and get the business. And we were hungry and like, fear of starvation. It's a good motivator, right? And
So early 90s or basically 90s, you spent building that first company.
The first company, 91 to 2007.
Ooh, okay. Well, that was basically
15 years.
15 years, and then another round.
Another 15 years from 2007 to 2022.
All right.
Yeah.
And then, how different was it starting the first company versus the second one?
Quite different. Because I mean, when I started the first company, I was just kind of like a, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed young. I was 29, but I mean, I was still like in real years,
I'm
I was like
29.
18, right? You know what I mean? Like still pretty juvenile, right? And
Yep.
I didn't know what to do, but I mean, I only had a sense of what I thought I needed to do, and but in this one, I knew all the systems that needed to be in place, and I knew where we'd made some mistakes with customer service, support, after sales support, and stuff like that. And I realized that these systems had to be built in from the ground up, and that I had to drill it into people that, like for instance, with our old company, you could get lost in voicemail trying to find someone on the phone. In my new company, I said, no, we're not having any voice. We'll have voicemail, but I mean, everyone will always answer the phone. No automated attendant. Now, 15 years later, we did finally put one in, but I mean, if you go 000 on the phone system here, it comes directly to me. Right. And, when people get panicked, they go 00000 to get to the operator at least in North America on a phone system. That's what they do. It comes immediately to me and I'm like, hi. And they're like, oh, I need help or whatever. I'm like, okay, well, I'm the owner. Well, I used to be the owner, but I'm the owner. How can I help you? Right. And, and so that's one of the things I said, we're always going to answer the phone. We're not going to have people stuck in voicemail or auto attendants or anything like that. Right. And, basically, I instilled a policy where any staff member, even a guy who drives the forklift in the warehouse, if he can solve the problem for under $100, doesn't need to ask anyone but himself. Customer walks in, he's the only guy there. It's 6:00 at night. The guy says, you know what, this is broken. I just bought it. I'm upset. And he looks at it and he realizes it's this $27, widget. He can go over, get him a new one, give it, say, here you go, have a nice day. Just next day, fills out a form. I used my $100 limit. Supervisors, $500, managers, $5,000, directors, $10,000, senior directors, $20,000, and everyone has a limit of problems they can solve without having to ask anybody else, right?
Very systematic.
Yeah.
I gotta say, very systematic.
Yeah.
But it doesn't then it's not a very big of a surprise that, people find you guys pleasurable to work with.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
That really makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, so let's just kind of wrap up the story with the first company. So you basically started it, ran it for 15 years, sold it, got a bunch of shares there. Basically the same, more or less the same business as the second company, more or less, right? It's the same industry, same play, more or less, right?
Say that again. Sorry.
So basically the first and the second company were more or less the same, right?
Yeah. Yes.
Same place,
pretty much so.
Pretty much, right? Yeah. And then you sold the first one, got left with millions in in stock options, which
went to nothing. So I became broke. Yeah.
What did that feel like? I mean, that must have sucked pretty hard.
So, I mean, I always made good money from the company, right? So I had savings and, I mean, I always got paid for my job, right? And then when I got a job, I got all these shares, which were worth millions, right? And I had a little bit of cash from the deal, but very little. And but I saw, okay, I'm worth millions and millions of dollars and but I couldn't spend any of it because I was an insider. It was restricted, right? And so it wasn't like I could go out and buy Ferraris and Porsches and things like that because it was all locked up for at least 2 years because I was an insider. And so it didn't change my life, right? It was just this thing like, oh, I'm this millionaire on paper. And then, like within 18 months, the whole thing was destroyed by this public company that was, it was just a bad partner that we picked, right? And so one day the shares became worthless. And so my shares that were worth something just became worthless. It wasn't like they came and got my house because I already had paid my house, right? With my money, my own paycheck money. And so, because these shares were just sitting there waiting for me to be able to cash them. And so it was just notionally, I went from millionaire to zero, but I still had my pay. But I thought, well, I'm going to need a job. I'm only 40 something. I can't go my whole life without an income. Yeah. And so I said, well, I can either start a new business or go get a job. And I thought, well, I'd rather start a new company. So that's what I did. And I mean, other partners were very, very upset about it. and it took them
How
a
come?
lot longer to be
Uh-huh.
my business partners that had shares, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But my fear of poverty was greater than my fear of loss, my pain of loss, right? So to me, I focused on being poor and changing that than losing something.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even think about it, actually. And I just
Mhm.
moved on, got a new thing, started a new company. I was a week later, I was back in business. I named this one after me, Gap Wireless. My name is Glenn Poulos, GP. I put an A in the middle for a vowel to make a name. Gap, that's how I did it. Took 10 minutes to name the company. I was in business in a week,
Nice.
and I never looked back. And
Yeah.
I mean, people say, how can you possibly say that or whatever? I'm like, I don't know. It's just the way I was, and I needed to put something else together, and focusing on what I lost wasn't going to give me anything. And my brain just naturally focused on the task at hand, which was poverty avoidance.
Yep.
How do I not be poor? Right. And I
Very
wasn't
strong
poor
motivator.
because I had my house and my savings and all that. But
No.
you know what I mean? Like paycheck
100%.
poor, where I had no
Yep.
money coming in and
Yep.
my wealth was removed. Right. So.
Yep. 100%. All right. And so let's kind of start wrapping it up. You are currently basically an employee of
Yeah.
NWA.
NWS. Yeah.
NWS, pardon. And as such, you're kind of bound to the company for at least a few years, right?
Yeah.
2-3 years, right?
Yeah.
What is next? What is next for you? What's
So, I launched the book, then I launched the podcast, and I'm trying to build sort of a brand around me helping companies. And I'm hoping that when I get some more time, not now, but later, I can build up maybe do some public speaking, maybe help some companies with some problems. And, they're, restructuring a sales team, they're stuck in a business problem, some consulting, maybe some of that, but not a full-time job, and just something to sort of like quiet down a bit, but still maybe make a bit of money, pay for some trips.
It doesn't sound like you plan on retiring, though.
Pretty much, yeah. No, I'm going to retire, but still work to make some money, if that's what you're saying. Yeah. I'm not going to just retire and go and no, because I would be bored within the first couple hours. And
yeah. Well, I guess it gives you a new perspective, I guess,
right.
Especially both for you and your partner, right?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, okay. I just want to ask you one more thing about the podcast. What's it all about, and how do we promote it?
Yeah, so it's called the Profit Powerhouse podcast, and basically meeting with entrepreneurs and people that are building something, and and just sort of sharing ideas on making money, building businesses, and systems and processes. I don't have a really tight group of people that I'm only restricting it to. And so, I share, you can go to my website, click on podcast, and then it describes it. And if you want to apply to be on it, I'm happy to talk to pretty much anyone right now. And, but it's basically, building businesses, selling businesses, problems in business, sales, and, money and stuff like that. Right.
Mm-hmm. What's the goal with it? Like, do you just want to have awesome conversations, or do you see like an end game to it?
So my end game would really be to come across people that would help me to build a network, so that they would help network me to, hey, this company in San Francisco needs your help. I've talked to you, you've talked to me, maybe I should hook you up with them, and, kind of leverage it into a networking based. Cause I live in Toronto. It's not like how am I going to meet people all over North America? So it allowed me to prospect, maybe not the person on the podcast, but persons they know, and say, hey, and when we're collaborating later on LinkedIn, say, hey, you do marketing and I do this, and hey, why don't you talk to this guy in Toronto? Hey, why don't you talk to this guy in LA? Right? Like that kind of thing.
I love that.
That's my goal. Yeah.
All right. Nice. So one last question, and then we can wrap it up. Let's say, what is the one thing that you would tell to the audience as takeaway of this whole conversation, and like something they can take home with them?
So I always share this. It's the same thing, which is you only get forever to make another impression. So if you're just starting out in your career, or even if you're in the middle of your career, and you're at work or whatever, remember that every time your boss walks by you, you're making an impression. So you always want to make sure that the impression that you make is better than anyone else in the building. So if you're in a group of people and everybody's working, you want to be seen to appear to be working the hardest. You don't want to be on Facebook when he walks by your desk, right? If you're at a trade show, everyone's sitting down because their feet are sore. You need to be standing in the aisle, pulling people into your booth. If it's a slow time, you want to talk to the marketing people, run you through every one of the product stands in your booth. Hey, how do I do? What's so great about this? What's so great about that? Then go talk to all the VPs and say, hey, what makes this company great? Why have you been here so long? What can you pass on to and they're like, wow, that kid's on fire. He's never off. That kid doesn't have an off switch. Well, we're looking for a new guy to drive business, and that's this new territory. Let's pick that guy, right?
Gotcha.
That's how you get ahead. You always want to be looking for where your next move is, and you want to be showing that you're the right choice for that every day. And
how does that translate to entrepreneurs and founders?
Well, to entrepreneurs and founders, I guess, I mean, it's how you're making impressions on your vendors, your business providers, like your banking, your insurance, and all that, your customers. And, like some people, like, they think it's okay to be belligerent or whatever. I'm the business owner. I'm the entrepreneur. I'm the CEO of a company of one, right? I mean, how is that benefiting you, right? Like, and so, like, you always want to measure that people are measuring you on every impression you make, not just the first one, right? It's not like, oh, well, now I'm an entrepreneur, I have my own company, so now you have to respect me. No, you have to act like someone that deserves respect, right? Mm-hmm. And so I'm just saying, like, always be aware of how you're being perceived, and don't be a pain in the ass, and don't be someone that someone finds offensive to deal with, because that's what makes the difference. When you go and get a deal, you lose it because of something, you want to be invited back to do the next deal. You don't want to be avoided on the next deal because you were a crybaby and you were all mad at them because they bought from somebody else, right?
Yep.
And remember, if you're selling number 3 or number 4 brand, figure that out early, quit and go get the better brand so that you can win the deals, right?
Yeah, especially like a salesperson. Awesome. I think that's a great message to leave the audience with. So with that, Glenn, this was a huge pleasure. I really appreciate you sharing your insights. I'll be looking forward, because like the reason I have the podcast as well is more or less similar. I live in Serbia, so it's even harder to connect with a lot of people in the world, even harder than Canada. So that's why I love talking to folks like you. I really appreciate you and your expertise and time. So it's been a pleasure, and I'll see you around. Yeah, and congratulations on your podcast. You're doing a great job, Stefan. Just keep it up. So thanks, man. Thanks. All right.